Hey there, so today I want to talk about slang. So slang is something that is very, very dear to my heart. It's something that I've grown up with. It is something that was integral to one of my first ever jobs. It was part of the family. It was part of my youth. It was part of, my identity for the longest time. And it's something which, even though now it really doesn't have much of a part in how I am now, it's something that over a long period of time did have an effect on me, and even to this day I still listen out for certain things, and I can normally tell if somebody is connected with certain industries or came from a certain area by the words that they're using. Most people are well aware, for instance, of the abysmal Mary Poppins style Dick Van Dyke Cockney slang. In a lot of ways this opened up people's eyes to apples and pears is stairs and things like this, the quaint old Cockney. The thing to remember is it's an evolving language. It always has been an evolving language, and the Cockney of the 60s and 70s has absolutely no bearing really on modern Cockney. And Cockney, although it used to be confined to a specific area in London, it's now found pretty much everywhere. It's gone mainstream, and all the different areas aren't in synchronization with each other, so you end up with words that are more popular in one place than they are in another place. So a lot of people seem to think that if you know Cockney then you go around speaking it all the time, and that's just not the case. Quite often it can be an inconvenience to use it on a regular basis, so what you end up doing is you might use it with your friends, or you may use it in certain social situations, but you just don't use it all the time. Now there's different levels of Cockney as well. So you've got the very, very standard stuff that everybody would know is apples and pears, stairs, Rosie Lee, tea, that type of stuff. Then you get the second order stuff. Now, of course, with a lot of slang, there's going to be a lot of foul language. This is just something that quite often the slang is there to cover up the foul language, or to allow you to be able to swear or do other things without actually doing it in a language that people understand. Quite often what you see with Cockney is you've got two different associations. You have on the one hand the contraction. So a word is a short version of another word. So for instance, Aris is short for Aristotle. Now what does Aristotle have to do with anything? Well, that rhymes with bottle, and this is where the other association comes in. So if it's not a contraction, then the word that you're using is going to be rhyming with something. So a classic example of this, Aris being a short version of Aristotle, that rhymes with bottle, which is actually another contraction of bottle and glass, which is arse, as in the British version, not the American version. And you can see this all over the place. You've got, for instance, you can say to somebody, hello me old China, and China is short for China plate, which means mate. So hello me old China is hello mate. As I said, a lot of this stuff people just don't use. It's there, you might hear it once or twice, you think, oh that's quite funny, I've never heard that one before, and then you'll never hear it again. At the other end of the scale, you've got the sixth order Cockney rhyming slang, and this gets really, really complicated. Like, this is the most complicated version of Cockney rhyming slang that I know of, and if you know a more complicated one, by all means leave a comment down below. But here goes. So rain in Paris. Paris rhymes with Aris. Aris is short for Aristotle. Aristotle is a Cockney rhyming slang for bottle. Bottle is a contraction of bottle and glass, which is a rhyming version of arse. So if somebody is an arse, you can say they are a rain in Paris. Now you'll never hear Dick Van Dyke say that one in Mary Poppins. And it's not just Cockney rhyming slang. There are other versions of slang which also get mixed in. So I grew up in the southeast of England, where there's a number of these. So we had the influence from London, which is Cockney, but then also I grew up in a family that was heavily influenced by the meat trade. You ended up with certain words that other people would also know because they've heard it. A classic example would be yob. If I said to you, I saw some yob on the street, you would probably know that I'm talking about a boy, a lad. So there's a couple of versions of butcher's talk. There's a French one, which the name escapes me right now. I'm sure it begins with an L. Then there's the butcher's backslang, which is the one I'm going to talk about right now. There's an Australian version, which is Rechtub K-lat. Are there any others? I've got a funny feeling there is another one, and the name escapes me. Anyway, there's a number of these. The thing that unites these is they're in the meat trade, they're butchers, they're people like that. Another one that you may have heard, especially from the 80s going forwards, is yenum. Yenum is money, backwards. Other versions that sort of crossed into mainstream would be doof and reeb. And then, if we was to stay within the meat trade, you've got Phoebe, B-Mal, and K-Rop. Now, B-Mal and K-Rop, they're a bit of a weird one, because unlike Phoebe, where we just said Phoebe as it's spelt, K-Rop or B-Mal, some people, they will say crop instead of K-Rop, but you'll never hear anybody say B-Mal. Bmal just, no, that doesn't work. It's always bmal, and you know, it's just because it doesn't sound right. It's the same reason that, you know, you always say tish, because, you know, if you keep the letters in the order that they should be, it doesn't quite sound right. And this also then happens with the Rechtub K-lat. Again, the letters are slightly off what they should be, but also on top of that, you don't say clat. You normally say K-lat. There may be people out there that say clat, but you know, it's never been any of the people that I've ever heard. Other words that also get like this is you might get Elri for girl, but then again you might hear somebody refer to you as a cuffy calf, and that one is also spelt wrong, but it's pronounced correctly. So as you can tell, things can get a little bit weird when you get down into this one. But then again, it's like, well, where did this come from? So I don't know if any of that has any bearings on Carny, which would then feed into Polari, but let's cover those two while we're at it. Carnival workers, Carnies, they have their own traditional speak, which, you know, again, has largely died out. You know, it was bigger in the old days than it is now. It's just too much hassle to try and use it in a regular setting. Now, Carny Code is something that, you know, a lot of people will also know certain words. Like, for instance, if I said that I had a beef with something, even though we were just talking about meat just a minute ago, I'm not talking about meat when I say I have a beef. Like, you know that a beef is a complaint, and this comes back to Carny Code. Other words that you would know, like booth. And the booth at a carnival would be a game that is run by sponsors or a community of other people, but not by the professional carnies. They're guests. Other carny words that you would know would be chump. Like, you know, this is a very, very well known, especially in North America word, probably more in North America than it is now in England. But, you know, chump, we all know what it means. That is also, it comes from the Carny Code. So, of course, the problem with Carny Code is that, you know, a lot of the words, they became mainstream, so you know, they lost their effectiveness as part of carnival talk. The secretiveness of it was lost, so they had to change it. So this then leads into what type of a language is Carny Code. So Carny Code was a sort of language, effectively it's a cant. But it was known as Parlyaree. And Parlyaree sort of fell by the wayside, and I think this is where the word Polari is coming from, because now you hear Polari. So for instance, yeah, words that would have been in the Carny Code that now show up in Polari, you've got somebody who's camp, well, we all know what that means. Butch, most people know that that means a very masculine person. Most people would know what the Kazi is. Especially in England, they would know what the Kazi is, and that came from Carny Code but now shows up in Polari. And then you've got things like Vera, which gets pretty confusing because Vera is short for Vera Lynn, but in Polari that would be gin. But in Cockney, so Vera's would be Vera Lynn's, which is skins, which is cigarette papers, which is why in Ebenezer Good by the Shaman, you hear them say, has anybody got any Veras? Lovely. Now, a episode like this, where we've gone through Polari, Carny, Cockney and Butcher's Backslang, wouldn't be complete if we didn't cover the Gypsy side of things. So like the Romani part. So there are the words that are purely Gypsy, like doughboy, that's a doughboy. So, you know, are you looking for a doughboy? You normally say no. If, for instance, you see somebody walk into a bar and, you know, they look like a right state, you know, you might say, if you are a Gypsy, to one of your compatriots, you may say, Dordy Kaka my chav, you know, which basically means, take a look at that, mate, you know, like. So there's a very long history of linkages between these various things, whether it's the Romanis and the Carnies and the, you know, the Butchers, and, you know, they all have vocabularies that feed in and out of their various lingos, and, you know, it ended up such that a lot of this has gone mainstream and people seem to forget sometimes where it comes from. So that's what I wanted to cover today. It's something, as I said, it's always been very dear to me because, you know, I've got, in my family there's Romani, you know, I've worked in the meat trade, my father worked in the meat trade, you know, a lot of my friends worked in the meat trade. Growing up near London meant that, you know, we got the Cockney stuff. A lot of my friends had Cockney. We, you know, watched a lot of it on TV, we heard it on the radio, you know, it was part of our local identity. And then on top of that, yeah, when the circus came to town, it was always nice to go and meet with those guys and, you know, have a chinwag, and you'd pick up some more stuff there from their own language. And yeah, as I said, like, it's something that over time became part of what has made me me. Like, yeah, I've hung out with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds over time. So yeah, that's where I'm going to finish up today. If you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button. If you like today's episode, hit like, and just dinner. All right.